become immune to them. But it's a very serious infection, like flu-like sort of infection. Now, Zika doesn't even show symptoms in more than 15% of the people infected.
Wow.
And they're trying to link it to microcephaly when there's never been any link, even in the heart. And
why are they doing that?
It's a scam. They're trying to make a vaccine. I think that they're allocating billions of dollars to it, to developing a vaccine and all this stuff. It's just a big scam. And it's also a cover-up, because the cases that happened in northeastern Brazil, which is an impoverished part of the country, that already is, especially now having some real economic issues. But this is a part of the country where you have a lot of illiterate, people who are out of work, who are just left behind by not only the Industrial Revolution, but now the IT, the information revolution. And so they were putting larvicide in the public water supply. And this larvicide is produced by, I'm trying to remember, one of the biggest Japanese conglomerates, like a $34 billion. It's trying to remember now, I can't. But, they make cars, it's a humongous conglomerate.
Sure.
It's one of the biggest companies in the world. But they also have, it's not Mitsubishi, but it's like something like that. And they have a chemical. What is it?
Hyundai?
No, Hyundai's a Korean company.
Oh, yeah, they're Korean.
It's a huge, it's a huge
Nissan
Japanese corporation.
Right.
It's right.
But it's a conglomerate,
Japanese
so it's just the car company is just part of it. Okay.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's a $34 billion corporation that doesn't want to be liable for causing 2,500 plus cases of microcephaly. Doesn't want to be sued for that. And so they can pay the CDC less money to pump up this Zika story. And then all these pharmaceutical companies can get to benefit from the development of this so-called vaccine against a very kind of innocuous mosquito-borne infection, certainly compared to dengue fever. And it's a variant of dengue that's much, much milder than dengue, and they're making this huge deal out of it. It's not about the virus at all. It's such a, it's really one of the worst that it's scams happening right now.
So you realize it's kind of
not really being talked about enough because it's happening in Brazil and nobody cares about Brazil. That's one thing I've really found is that like Brazil is like the UFO of countries or something like that. It's like one of the biggest economies in the world. And, also the United States is totally at economic warfare against Brazil as a member of the BRICS alliance, and I think has been to some degree instrumental in what's happened both politically and economically there over the past year. There was definitely a movement there against the president, against Dilma. It wasn't really her; it was her as the figurehead of the entire government. People are sick.
Don't you think that the United States and the Western world has issues with South America in general based on their socialist movements? I mean, there has been a political deal going on for a long time. We just don't. We don't want
socialism to go around in our own.
I'm not saying socialism bad or good. I'm just saying there's been this.
That's what they say. What it's really about is they want to have control over their natural resources. So they'll call it a political thing, but it's about this is our backyard, and you belong to us, and
it's part of their socialist.
Appeal to us.
Yeah, part of their socialist movements was they wanted to control their own resources. They wanted to give their resources back to their people. They wanted to push the U.S. out, control their own banking systems. And, banking is a big deal. If anybody wants to control their own banking systems, the West comes in and takes over. But
that's true. Every single one of the Arab countries that we have taken out since 9/11 did not have a central bank. before, and now they do.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Afghanistan, I'm talking about Syria, I'm talking about Libya and Yemen. These are all countries that did not have a central bank, and they're either in the process of getting one installed or they're still being knocked down.
Well, I know in Libya they installed one within 2 weeks or a week of taking it over. I mean, they did it immediately. So
yeah, it's incredible.
So now that there's all these people are realizing that there's more truth out there than what we're seeing. I mean, the media that we see is pretty vanilla, right? I mean, they just don't dive into real issues. And there's a serious truth movement out there. Do you think it's now penetrating in a meaningful way into the mainstream?
I do. Like you say, that there have been so many defectors, journalists who've been a part of the mainstream who realize, wait, this is not what I got into this business to do. I don't know if you saw the tape of a 30-year, one of the top, anchormen of Germany said, listen, I've been paid by the CIA for the past 30 years to tell the stories that they want me to tell. And I'm telling you that this is what I've been doing, and I'm sick of it, not doing it anymore. Things are just kind of falling apart. The center cannot hold. And, basically, because of the internet, and it's a very different culture, a culture of transparency, and people who think, go into journalism thinking that it's one thing, because that's forever journalists have gone, Columbia Journalism School, and thinking that, they're going to tell the truth, and then they find out when they go work for the networks that that's not what's going to happen.
They're very disillusioned.
Yeah. So for years they just kind of sucked it up and like, this is the business I got into, and now I have to do it. Other people now, because of this culture of transparency of the internet, are saying no. There are other avenues anyway. And so you see that guy from Ohio, I'm spacing out his name, who started his own internet, venture. He'd been on many network news affiliate stations in Ohio and around the country. And Jack Uger, who had been at CNN, was fired, and then now he has the most popular YouTube channel. But still, as I said, his alternative is very vanilla compared to, there's a spectrum of alternatives out there.
Well, an alternative, there's some yahoos in alternative media too.
Definitely.
I mean, they're coming up with all sorts of bogus stuff. I mean, you're like, oh, yeah. I wouldn't want to be associated with that.
Absolutely not. No, and some of it is psychological warfare, I think, on the part of the Russians. I think some of it is, there's an element of that.
If there's a way, if they can beat us, if other countries can do warfare on information and turn the people against the U.S. internally, that is, it weakens the United States.
Yeah, and I think to some degree, I think there's been some element of that in Russia today. I actually think Russia today is generally an excellent, you'll get better journalism from that site than from anything on television, certainly. But there's a bit of an agenda on RT, less so in the video element, but in the editorials that they write, that are definitely, you can tell. It's definitely a psychological warfare. It's a demoralization campaign against the institutions of the United States to demoralize the public here. But it's not like, it's not like they're not getting a lot of assistance from the institutions within the United States already that are already lying so much, and who, in all likelihood, staged 9/11. And, there's nothing about 19 Arabs with box cutters hijacking airplanes and bashing them into buildings. There's just so many things wrong with that story. I'm not even going to get into it.
One thing I'm noticing that's going on, though, is there's a lot of leaders in our country, and maybe not in leadership posts per se, but leaders who are entrepreneurs, who are business leaders, who are saying, okay, enough is enough. We need the truth, and we need to fix our country so that it works for everybody. And they really want the world to be different. They want it to be transparent. They want the truth, and they want us to finally get our act together. And so I'm seeing more of that when I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders.
Well, I think that certainly everyone in their right mind would want that, but there are forces who, that's how we can have a situation where like a terminally ill presidential nominee is running for president. Like, but they're so powerful and they have such vested interests, and they have so much control that it's allowed that to happen.
That's weird.
We're the people.
It's very
all of
interesting
us are up
situation.
against very powerful forces that do not want freedom at all. They want an absolute clampdown, a planetary clampdown.
Well, how important is truth in democracy?
It's the most important thing, I think. But I don't know if it's ever really been achieved historically.
Well, when the printing press, when the printing press came out, it changed society quite a bit, and that brought on the Renaissance, right? And the countries that, and I think this is very interesting. There were a lot of countries that did not want it. They were scared off of it, and they did not let the printing press come in for a long time. The church was scared off of it originally, and they were fighting it. But the countries that embraced it and let it go forth still today have an economic advantage over the countries that didn't. There's a huge
that's
difference.
Philosophy, that's the philosophy of, internet proponents. As we watch so many industries crumble because of the internet. The internet has disrupted everything, every business and almost every institution, because it's information, and that's what human beings run on. We're like,
and it's automation,
and automation too. Which are helped with networks and things that it's a diversified automation so that anybody can do it, and that's why the big banks are so worried about fintech, because. And they come out and say this, they can eat our lunch. They could, the president or CEO of Goldman Sachs said, this could take us down. And he's right. Fintech could completely change banking as we know it. So it's pretty interesting. Fintech is.
It's the automation of banking and all the different things, and the automation of people doing banking on their smartphones, where they basically there's tools now they can just transfer money between themselves. It's all automation of finance, essentially. It's using technology in finance. So it's Bitcoin, it's blockchain, it's
right, the blockchain,
it's but those are just one elements of it. It's also all these different apps that are allowing people to bypass banks to transfer money. There's a lot going on. There's financial advisors that can be automated and different things that you're looking at. Now, when you're talking about really broad stuff, you still want a human being looking at the economics between countries. So if you have a lot of wealth, you need somebody. But for basic stuff, all these financial advisors who are pushing stocks are going to go away. So now how are you going to push stocks? So there's some serious changes going on.
Yeah, and then of course banks are trying to then buy these sorts of software.
Yes.
So I was offered, some kind of a robot financial advisor by my bank last week. I thought that was funny, and there are banks who want to be on, ahead of the curve with Bitcoin. And one of the big that was a big story about 6 months ago. One of the main founders of Bitcoin, one of the main programmers of that code, defected from Bitcoin to go work with the big banks to design a larger scale type of thing, because Bitcoin is actually really kind of a small scale operation. So,
yeah.
The amount of, and that's part of, you want to have the scarcity. That's what makes it maintain its value, and that there will be a finite amount of Bitcoin at the end,
Yes.
once the algorithm has worked itself out, so that's where the value is going to come from, is the scarcity. And he just, was wooed, obviously, by the banking industry away to do that on a larger scale.